So, very brief review of each of these 6 trends. One is about the expansion in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities. This is, again, the same brands that I've mentioned before, how fast they expand in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities. And you see the color code and the recent openings of the last 3 years, and the number of stores they had by September 2011, so essentially 6 months ago. So it's expanding, and it's expanding fast in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities. So this is still something that the brands are doing to create new demand and to fuel their own growth. But as I said earlier, there is a limit now to their expansion. We see them slowing down their expansion because they want to keep the the exclusive characteristic of the brand and not make that widely available. The ultimate exclusive brand, of course, if you look at that, would be Chanel, because they only have 6 brands today in China. What brands are doing is create, for the customer experience. So this is beautiful pictures, not a graph. And but this is one way that that the luxury brands are trying to improve the customer experience in China, and they are creating fantastic consumption cathedrals, if I can call them like that, because these stores are just beautiful. They are large, they are very welcoming, very good staff, and shopping in those stores in China, mainland China, is actually much more comfortable than shopping in Hong Kong. Hong Kong, the stores are actually smaller. You seem to be packed when you go there, and so the treatment and the greeting that you receive in some of those stores, because there are so many people, is not as great as what you can get in some of those Shanghai, Beijing stores or China stores. And this is what the brands are doing to make sure that they continue to attract consumers in mainland, as opposed to them buying abroad. So there are some examples of some of the stores. An expansion that we see, of course, in shopping malls is a vertical expansion, where stores are now moving from, they were on the first floor, but now they are acquiring, the lease to the second floor and the third floor, so they can create a cathedral, in effect, with a beautiful decoration. So that's part of the dream as well. That's part of the story, and that's part of creating a wonderful customer experience for customers. Online is, we have been asking consumers in China, how do you get information about luxury brands? And it used to be magazines, fashion magazines, and now, far and above fashion magazines is the internet. And 2 different types of internet. Of course, they are the websites from the brands, and so all of the luxury brands now, or most of them, have actually translated their websites in Chinese, and so it's easy for Chinese consumers to get product information, get company information, brand information. They can see the video clips of those brands, and all of this is very accessible because it's in Chinese. But there is also the news portals. There is also, of course, and we'll talk more about that, all the blogs, the Weibos, the community sites, where a lot of things, even though this is still a small industry by any standard, the word of mouth about luxury brands on Weibo, for example, is actually incredible. And so that is something that, of course, the brands have to watch. So there is an internet revolution taking place in China, and brands, of course, are paying attention to that, and they are leveraging that new marketing tool, which has been made available to them. E-commerce, in fact, not much to say about e-commerce, and therefore I'm not going to say much. Clearly, trial stage. Brands are trying to do it. They have different strategies. Burberry is, of course, different than others. Burberry is probably the most advanced. But clearly, it's really, really, really small. There are lots of barriers to selling luxury brands on the internet. And so brands are not really pushing into that direction quite aggressively. What's interesting is the one on the right-hand side, which is the multi-brand, the equivalent of Gilt in the US, of ventprivé.com in Europe, which is this, an example of that is Glamour Sales, where they have, in fact, it's discounted fashion, but only sold as a club, but genuine brands, of course, and that seems to be working quite well. Same way as in the US and in Europe, same model. The heritage, how do you differentiate when there is so much proliferation? If you walk into Plaza 66 in Shanghai, for example, in Jigan district, you have 5 floors of luxury brands, and you're a Chinese consumer. How do you know where you want to go? Which floor do you go? Which store do you enter? And of course, you can get information from the, from the internet. That's what a lot of people do, as we discussed. But one thing that the brands are doing also is try to explain who they are and how different they are from the other guys next door or next floor. And so you see now more and more of these brands creating exhibition in China, in museums, showcasing their best, their best jewelry or watches or collection, showcasing the history of their founder, like Chanel did with a Coco Chanel exhibition a year ago in Shanghai, for example. And so this is to explain to Chinese consumers that these brands have a history, they have a founder, they have a heritage, they have a specificity, they have a differentiation, and you don't go there by accident, you go there because you understand that heritage and that story. So more and more investment in that area. I know everybody is interested by the Chinese luxury brands, and quite rightly so. I think there is a question, which is, will we see one day a successful Chinese brand becoming, in the luxury space, becoming successful not only in China but also globally? And I think everybody is hoping that's going to happen. Some people said that if there is only one place in the world where it could happen, it's probably China. Because of the history of China, because the heritage of China, because the art and craft of China. And so there's going to be ways for Chinese luxury brands to emerge from China. So there are 2 examples. You are familiar with them. One is Shangxia. The other one is Qilin. Jury's out. We can talk more about it if you want during pauses. I think jury's out. I think what's extraordinary and very interesting that this is happening. But to create a luxury brand, as George was describing, you need years, decades, maybe centuries. So it's not going to happen overnight. But I think it's interesting to see that it's starting and it could happen. One word on online media and exposure to Weibo and other blogs. I think there is some good news and some bad news there. You have heard stories about the luxury brands being associated with stories that were not very popular, either social questions or corruption questions, and so this association, of course, is creating negative buzz about these brands, and so this is something that brands have to be very aware of because it could actually damage their reputation, and all the work that they have been trying to do in China can be jeopardized simply because of those bad press, bad coverage. I know you have a speaker this afternoon talking about Weibo and talking about the blogs. He's a good friend. He's a very interesting guy. So you'll know more about that. So I'm not going to say more, but stay this afternoon because he has a very interesting presentation about this phenomenon.